All right, guys, let's go through the GE3 wire lighting control projects. I believe there's three of them to do. So these guys are very similar to the Douglas 2 wire. They're just an older version. And they're different in that instead of using diodes like the Douglas 2 wire, this one makes use of a coil that has a center tap. So let me show you what it looks like here. So let's zoom in here on the actual unit. So this one has the same as the Douglas 2 wire in that it has a set of contacts. These guys are usually rated for about 20 amps. So you have your line coming in, then from that other side of the contact that would go to your loads, right? So your bank of lights, and then the neutral will be connected to the other side of the lights. And then this is obviously your 120 volt lighting controls. And then over here, you've got your 24 volts AC that goes to the coil. So you'll see here that there's no diodes as a part of this relay. It's just a matter of setting up a magnetic field on one side of the coil or the other side of the coil, right? So here it says the red conductor is the on conductor. So that means that current is going to go through this coil, right? And then back on the center tap here. So the center tap goes to the blue, and the blue goes back to the X2 of your transformer. And so obviously you're going to have a 120 to 24 volt AC transformer that feeds this guy. And so if you have current flowing here, then it creates a magnetic field on this side of the coil, which pulls this iron plunger. I'm calling it a plunger, but it's like a piece of iron that's in the center. It's the center core of the relay here, and it pulls it in. And in doing so, it closes the contact and allows the 120 to go to the lights. Okay, so it'll stay in that position. So once it pulls it in, then the contacts stay closed. So it's similar to the Douglas 2 wire in that it latches in that position. Okay, then in order to turn it off, then we have current flowing on the black conductor. That current would flow through this side of the coil, and then back on the neutral here, or the center tap, right, back to our control transformer. And in energizing this portion of the coil, then the iron core is going to be pushed out, which would open up the contact, which would obviously disconnect our lighting load there. So this one is obviously the GE3 wire in that it needs a center tap of the coil here. No diodes, it's just a matter of turning on one side or the other side of a coil. Okay, so let's take a look at the first project here. So this one has complete the following so that a switch controls the relay and the light. So I think there was a little bit of confusion on my part on the Douglas 2 wire video prior to this, in that the first project I was a little bit lost as to whether there was one light or two lights there. But clearly on this first one we just have one relay and one light. So let's walk through here. We've got, now not being shown here is that there's a transformer that takes the 120, it steps it down. Oh, right here. Sorry, donkey. It's right in front of my face. It's right there. Okay, so transformer here that takes our 120 and drops her down to 24 volts AC. Okay, and we've got our neutral there. So I've been doing the neutral in blue here. Okay, so let's start off with our 120 volts. So that feed we've done on the other diagram down on the Douglas 2 wire. We came down here, right? And brought it down and around and over to one side of the contact of the relay here. And then from there, it would make sense that I would have put the hot on this side and the neutral on this side, but I've drawn the hot on this side, so we'll come over there. So that's going to come off the other contact here. Okay, so that takes care of our 120, or doesn't? We need the neutral there, right? So we'll tie our neutral into this side, and then we're good to go. Okay, so that's our 120 volts, right? So from line 1 coming over to one side. Actually, you can't see that with the pen. I keep doing that, but I need to use the mouse. Line 1 over to one side of the contact. Then when the contact closes, that 120 will be transferred over to the light, and the light has a tie into the neutral return there. Okay, then let's do our 24 volts AC there. Okay, so we've got our feed going to the center part of this rocker switch, right? So we're going to come from X1, and we're going to feed the center part, or the white terminal of the rocker switch. At each of your stations, you have like red and black and blue conductors there, and white conductors to make use of. So then our tie-in from the switch to the actual relay here is we go red to red, and we go black to black. So that first conductor, I guess, would be white, right? Because it's going to the white terminal. But I obviously can't do white on a white background, so just take my word for it. So that guy's going to tie into there. So those would be our on and off conductors there. And then the center tap of the coil here is going to go to the blue, right? So that goes to X2. And that's going to tie into here. Beautiful. So that takes care of our 24 volts AC wiring there. Okay, so obviously this wiring right here for the 24 volts and the 120 volts doesn't come near anything, like doesn't come near each other, right? There's actually a mechanical divider, like a piece of metal in between the two portions of the panel there. Okay, so that takes care of our first one. Stop here, and then we'll go back to the shop, and I'll show you how to wire that one up. All right, guys, so this one's the GE3 wire. This one's super old. You probably see this in old apartment buildings, old churches, sometimes some schools. So this one, as we've seen in the diagram, is like a magnetic relay. And so the first lab that we're going through is let's see, it's a single switch, single relay, and a single light. So you'll see here that as I've been wiring up, I put on my hasp there, so please do the same because you forget that the power is on. Okay, so put the hasp there as you're wiring up, then there's no issues and you're not going to hurt yourself. Right, so that feeds into this box here. Right, so as soon as that's on, you have live 120 volts available there. So please wear your safety glasses at this station as well. That guy feeds the control transformer, and then we've got 120 volts available here, and we've got 24 volts AC available down here. So first lab is we've got a single switch controlling a single relay that controls a single light. So just by hitting this guy, then you can see that the light turns on and turns off. So nothing magical about this one, other than the fact that we have a 120 volt light over there, and we've got a 24 volt AC switch over here. Okay, so you want to make sure that, like obviously there's terminations here on and off on the switch here. You can see the wiring here. So I've got the white, the red, and the black terminals corresponding to the diagram that we've just gone through. And when I hit this switch, then you can, if I hold down the switch, you can hear that buzzing, right? So that's the relay right there, right? So I've got the feed going into the top, and from the bottom there, I've got that going to the light, and you can just hear the humming on that unit there. So you've got the current going in on either the black or the red there, and then the blue, if you follow the blue, it's going back to the return on the secondary side of the transformer there. So that's our first one, being a single switch, single relay, and a single light. All right, guys, let's take on our second project. So we'll start off with our 120 volt to the transformer. So we got line to one side, we got neutral to the other side. So that's going to feed our 120 in there. And then on this side, again, we have 24 volts AC. Okay, and then let's finish off the 120 volts first though, right? So we've been taking our line 1, or hot, and then we've been bringing that down to the bottom here, out of the way of our 24 volts AC. So we'll come across here, trying to keep as straight as possible, and that goes to one side of the contacts. This one relay is feeding this one single light. Okay, so that takes care of our feed, and then we just have our neutral going back to the neutral terminal in the panel. Beautiful. Okay, now we'll take care of the 24 volts AC. So our white conductor which I'm going to draw in black, is coming down here from X1. Okay, that's going to feed the center tap of each of these rocker switches. Okay, so parallel feed to each of these guys. And then we've just got red to red, black to black, right? So we'll do our reds first, right? So these guys tie together. Okay, so parallel feed from the reds, and then whichever one's closer is going to go to the relay. Okay, then we get our blacks. Okay, so the red is to turn it on, the black is to turn it off. I haven't left myself too much room here. Easy now. Sorry, 2 seconds. Okay, so we'll try to bring this guy down. Tie into the other black here. And then that guy is going to go to this terminal right here. Not clean at all, Pete. Okay, so those blacks then both have a parallel feed into that terminal. And then we just have to finish off with the blue going back to the X2 of our transformer. Excellent. Okay, so that takes care of our 24 volts AC. I bet you guys can do a much cleaner diagram than I can. And then our 120 volts is coming over here, right? So coming over here through this contact, and from that contact over to our lighting load. And for our 24 volts AC, we have X1 feeding our whites on each of the switches. And then the reds are the turn on, right? So those guys are going to feed into here, feed this side of the coil, and go back on the blue as our return. And then if we hit the switch in the black position for the off, then we have the feed from the white going through the switch over to the black. So either one will feed in parallel here and then go to the black terminal. That'll feed the other side of the coil, which will pull the core out and open up the contacts. And again, that comes back on our center tap on the blue back to X2 of our transformer there. Okay, let's go back to the shop and take a look at the wiring. Okay, hopefully I can get this one in on the camera. So the light that I'm using, I believe, is this bad boy right here, being fed off of this relay right here. So I've got two switches that control one relay, that control one light, right? That obviously being the relay and that being the light. And if we hit the two switches, so I've just arbitrarily chosen these guys up here. Can I get this in there? And if I hit my first switch, turns on the light. Trying to get everything in there. If I hit the second switch, then it turns off that light. It would have been easier if I had done a switch that was closer to the light. Okay, but I've got two switches for in different locations, right? So obviously I've just gone off of the same switch, but I should have gone here and possibly down here to denote my two different locations. But again, this one turns on the light. Okay, then I can turn it off. And then the other switch turns the light on. And the same switch turns it off. So I've got two switches in two locations that control that relay. And again, if I hold down the switch, then you can hear the electromagnetic coil pulling in and changing the state of that guy. So that's sending current to the coil. And then again with the same switch, opposite switch, and then if I turn it off, then it de-energizes the unit there. Cool. Okay, third project is the switch controls both relays and both lights. Okay, so one switch controls two relays, and those two relays are tied into those lights. And again, this would be something where you have, greater than like 16 amps. I believe we were saying that the rating of the contacts on these guys are good for 20. So if you had like more than 16 amps, you would most likely separate your loads onto two separate relays. So these are single lights, but they're more likely going to be like, larger banks of lights that you're controlling. Okay, so let's start off again with our 120 volts. Okay, so we'll start off with the feed to the transformer. Okay, then we're going to feed our 120 volts over to those contacts there, right? So that will come up here again, get out of the way, and we'll come down and then feed either side of these contacts, right? So we got to feed this side of this contact of this relay, and then we will do a parallel feed with the other contact there. Okay. From each of these guys, we're going to go to individual lights. Again, it would have been cleaner if I put the hot on the right hand side there, but I put them onto the left hand side. So let's see, this guy is going to come up and feed this side of our light. This is hard to get clean here. Oh my goodness, Peter. Hang on. I don't know what I was smoking there. It's so hard with this pen here. Hang on. Okay, so let's bring this down. Okay, and then over here. Beautiful. Okay, and then this relay is going to feed the other light, right? So we'll come over here, come down, trying desperately to keep her clean. Hey, gorgeous. Okay, so then we have our neutrals, right? So these guys would tie it together, and then we've got our neutral coming back to the panel here. Okay. Again, out in the field, most likely these guys would have separate neutrals going back to the panel there. Okay, so that takes care of our 120 volt lighting, or the 120 volt portion of our lighting controls there. So let's do the 24 volts now. So let's see, we got X1. This is again supposed to be a white conductor, but I'm going to draw it in black. So we're going to feed the center tap of our rocker switch, and then similar to the other ones, we got red to red and black to black. Okay, so let's do the red here. That's our on. Okay, then we got black. That's our off. And then to finish this off, we need that center tap, right? So from here, that's our blue conductor, and the blue conductor is going to go back to the X2 of our transformer. Beautiful. Okay, so that takes care of the 24 volts and our 120. Again, 120 is coming over here, over to both of the relay contacts, and then when either one turns on, then the current will go up to each individual bank of lights, and then the neutral will go back to our panel. On our 24 volts AC, same as the other ones, we have X1 going to the center part of a rocker switch. The red is turning on, so energizing this portion, pulling the iron core in, right, and closing the contact. And it looks like I missed something, right? It says that the switch controls both relays, and I'm asleep at the wheel here. I got to do a parallel feed to those guys, right? So let's see if we can clean this up now. So this black obviously needs to come over here and do a parallel feed with this guy. Okay, now it's messy, eh? Okay, now the red needs to come over. It's not very nice at all. And that guy is going to feed the parallel feed to the red conductor here. Okay, and then our blues have to tie together for the return. Oh, that's awful. Okay, you guys are going to do a better job than I did. Okay, so that guy's coming over here and into the blue there. Okay, so parallel feeds red to red, black to black, and blue to blue there. All right, guys, let's go to the shop and take a look at the wiring. Hopefully it's cleaner than this diagram that I just did. Okay, so next one is one switch, two relays, I believe. Let me check my paperwork here. Yeah, one switch, two relays, and each relay controls a separate bank of lights. So each light bulb there would be representing a bank of lights here and a bank of lights here. So I got one switch right here that controls two relays, and each relay is tied into a separate light there. So you can see that that feed goes down to these two separate relays here. If I hold the button down, then you can feel the relay changing, right? So again, just be careful because you do have 120 here. But if you hold your finger against the relay over here where we have 24 volts AC, then you can physically feel the plunger inside there being pulled into one side or the other there. So this one is a single switch controlling two relays, and each relay is separately feeding two banks of lights. And last project, it says complete the following so that each switch controls one relay and one light. The master switch controls both lights. Okay, so we've got each switch controls one relay and one light. So each switch is going to control an individual relay, which is going to control an individual light. Okay, and then we've got this switch that controls this relay, which controls the other light. Okay, so separate circuits there for each of the lights. And again, this is most likely a bank of lights. And the master switch is going to control both lights. So you got to figure out your wiring for this guy. Okay, we got to bring the 24 volts AC to the center portion. And then we're going to have light 1. So again, made some mistakes here. This should be light 1, this should be light 2, right? Corresponding to relay 1 and relay 2 and switch 1 and switch 2. The R is, remember, the on signal, right? So R would correspond to this part of the coil here. But on this master control relay, the R is the on output. So we got to bring this to one of our relays, so relay 1. And then we'll tie the R2 into relay 2. This is coming straight from our 24 volts AC on our control transformer. And then we need some signals for a parallel feed to the blacks, right? So black 1 would go to this bad boy right here, and black 2 would go to this guy right here. Okay, so you have to turn the dial to either 1 or 2 to control relay 1 or relay 2, obviously the ones that you've wired to. And those guys should supersede the switches that you have locally controlling the lights. So this one will be able to have like a master relay control board that will be able to control these relays that will ultimately control these banks of lights. So let's go to the shop one last time. We'll take a look at how that works. All right, guys, so last one that you guys will have to figure out, and it shouldn't be too hard because we've already gone through the other 3 projects. So we should have a single switch controlling a single relay, controlling a single light. So I've wired that guy up right here. So I've got single switch, single relay, single light. So I've got local control there. Then I've got another switch down here that controls the other relay and the other light. Oh, sorry, up here. Okay, so I got local controls for each of those guys. And then I should be able to control everything with the master control relay here. So you'll see that I brought the feed, the 24 volts into here, and then I got my reds and my blacks going to each of the relays. So if I want to turn on that first light, then I turn it to number 1. And this baffled and confused me because I'm like, wait, well, how come it's not turning on? You have to press it, and then it turns on. Beauty. Then I've got this one for the off. It's turned to the 1, so that corresponds to that light, right? So I can control that guy either with the switch locally, or I can remotely control it with this control panel here. If I've got the other switch down here, then I can turn that light on, right? And turn it off locally. And then that's my second light. So I've got to turn this bad boy to 2. And this guy to 2. Okay. And then it's already on, so I can turn it off here. So main control panel, I can turn it off, and I can turn it on. Cool. So we have control here. You have to make sure that it's dialed into the appropriate terminal, right? There's 3 and it's not turning anything on. So that controls 2, or I can also control my first light, easy now, and turn that guy on as well, and locally control that guy as well. Cool. So we've got local control with the push buttons, and then we got master control with this master control relay right here. Again, very high tech. All we're doing is we're just doing a parallel feed, right? It's just a coil. So we're either feeding it from the switch, or we're having that same 24 volts coming from the controller here. All right, guys, good luck with this one. We'll see you on the next project.